Well, good morning. I'm speaking today from Treaty 6 territory, and I acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection to this land. Now, before I begin, I'd also like to extend my deepest condolences to the loved ones of the Alberta paramedic who was killed in a highway collision this weekend. It's another reminder of the risks and the sacrifices that paramedics make every day in the service of their communities. And I also want to wish a quick and complete recovery for the other paramedic who was injured in the crash. And my thoughts are with paramedics across Alberta as they reflect on this incident over the weekend. Now, last week, UCP Health Minister Jason Copping made a startling admission. According to Copping, his signature program to bring doctors to rural communities has recruited only a single doctor in 9 months of operation. And that doctor won't actually begin practicing in Cold Lake until next year. So the UCP has essentially failed to place a single new doctor through this program in 2022. Now, many of the 15 communities eligible for help through RESIDE are in crisis. Fort Vermilion has 10 of its 22 beds closed due to staffing shortages. High Level has 6 of its 21 beds closed. Rocky Mountain has 5 of 31 acute care beds closed due to staff shortages. Milk River has seen repeated closures of their emergency room. Barhead, their obstetrics are closed. Indeed, it's closed due to staff shortages. In Rimbey, the obstetrics unit has been shuttered for an entire year. In Lac La Biche, 8 of their 23 acute care beds are closed. They've seen numerous ER closures, and their obstetrics unit has been closed since May with no end in sight. In Wabasca, all 10 of their acute care beds are closed. These communities were all supposed to get help from the $6 million RESIDE program, but they are just some of the 32 Alberta communities where the hospital is partially closed due to the UCP's war on healthcare workers. Now, I understand that Minister Copping will attempt to relaunch the RESIDE program later this week. We'll see what fixes he looks to bring to the table, but what he cannot fix, what no one in the UCP can fix, is that frontline healthcare professionals know they cannot trust the UCP. 3 years of hostility and threats and harassment is not going to be erased with a slightly different program. Indeed, young Albertans know this when they decide where to start their career. Nurses and doctors across Canada and around the world look at how the UCP behaved throughout the pandemic, and they choose to keep looking, especially when they see the extremist views that are dominating the UCP leadership contest. Frankly, to truly reset this relationship, to rebuild trust with healthcare professionals in the province of Alberta, we need a new government. An Alberta NDP government will bring real resources to the front line, and we will work collaboratively with Alberta healthcare professionals to rebuild the care that Alberta families rely on. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, we will start with any questions in the room. If you are on the phone or Zoom, please use the raise hand function or star 9.
Hey.
So Minister Copping said that they're going to, they're going to change the criteria for the program. So they've already acknowledged that it wasn't working the way it was intended to. What specifically do you want to see in the criteria when they change the program? What would you like them to do? Expand it to more communities, expand the amount of money that it's offering in incentives? What specifically would you like to see?
Well, I think what it comes down to is that really this program is not going to solve the problem. What we have right now on the table is not bad. I mean, so let's be clear. Financial incentives, something that's been tried before, other jurisdictions, has not always been successful, but not a bad idea to try. But fundamentally, the problem here is the deep damage that this government has done to the relationship with healthcare professionals in the province of Alberta, tearing up their contract, instituting legislation that says the contract is only binding on one side. The attacks throughout the pandemic, the utter undermining of our healthcare system, has driven doctors out of practice, out of province, and has made it incredibly difficult to recruit. So really that is the root of this issue. So frankly, whatever changes Minister Copping introduces to the program, if he increases the level of incentives, he offers it to more communities, that is not going to undo the root problem, and that's that healthcare professionals simply do not trust any deal with this government.
Just as a follow-up to that, I mean, have you spoken to anybody who applied to this program and wasn't eligible, or have you spoken to doctors who say specifically the reason they don't want to come to these rural communities in Alberta is because of the government? Because this is a problem that governments across Canada are facing right now, staff shortages in healthcare. It's not extraordinarily unique to Alberta.
So I have not had any healthcare professionals reach out to me specifically or even mention this program. I've spoken with a number of rural municipal leaders and other people on health committees that are looking to recruit. None of them have mentioned this program as being an asset or any help. What they have said in many occasions is that they have had doctors ready to come, move here, were looking seriously at the position, but once they got a better sense of what the political climate was and the situation was with the Alberta government, they chose to go elsewhere. So they've gone to BC, they've gone down to the US, they are choosing not to come to Alberta. So I recognize, indeed, recruitment has been a challenge in Alberta for quite some time. It is a challenge across Canada, because of a lot of the impacts of the pandemic. But the fact is, this government has made it so much worse. And indeed, I have repeatedly heard from municipal leaders, community leaders, healthcare professionals who have been doing this for years, actively working to recruit people, and they have told me how much harder it has been because of the choices and actions of this government.
And can I ask just a kind of an off-topic question? AMA members are going to start voting on a tentative agreement this week, I think. What are your thoughts on the government and the AMA coming to a tentative agreement? And do you think that's a positive sign?
So obviously I can't speak to what is in the contract, what's on offer to doctors, and certainly I respect that process, and I wish them well as they consider what is best for them, for their patients, and for the Alberta healthcare system. What I can say is we have had 3 years of needless aggression, political posturing, undermining of the work that doctors have tried to do, a government that has refused to listen, tore up their contract, ended negotiations, and went on the attack in the midst of a public pandemic. So I certainly hope, for the sake of doctors in Alberta, for the sake of Albertans and our healthcare system, that we can maybe see some end to that chaos and uncertainty which this government intentionally created. But ultimately, I think the damage that has been done to this relationship, what are we actually gaining? What does anyone gain from this government's refusal to come to a fair deal for more than 2 years? So frankly, what it's going to come down to, I think, is whatever deal gets signed, we are still going to have a fundamental mistrust of this government and its intentions. And frankly, we can't have an election soon enough, because this is not a government. The UCP cannot be trusted with our healthcare system.
So what further needs to be done beyond the signing of this agreement? Is it the repeal of Bill 21, or what would rebuild that trust?
Again, I don't know that there's anything that can rebuild trust in this government. Frankly, the behavior of the former healthcare minister was reprehensible on many fronts, but met with the praise of the premier. Doctors have been watching and seen that. They have been watching on the front lines over the last couple of years, and over the last year particularly, as the pressure has built up in the system and has been consistently downplayed and talked down by the health minister and by others in the UCP caucus. And they are watching a leadership race now where there are candidates who are wanting to fire the entire board of the AHS, the CPSA, everyone involved. So really just further chaos in the midst of a system that's already been badly damaged by the same at the hands of this government. So certainly, they should repeal those elements of Bill 21 that give them the right to tear up the contract, create a one-sided deal. They should be addressing the very real issues that exist in terms of virtual codes and many of the other things that doctors have been asking about since the beginning of the pandemic, in which this government refused to act on. And it was directly responsible for the closure of medical clinics across the province, driving others out of province and out of practice. All of those issues need to be addressed, and we, Albertans, deserve a government that will actually make the investments needed to support physicians in our hospitals, in primary care, to be able to deliver the care that's needed. But frankly, whoever's at the helm, whatever deal they sign, I don't believe that the UCP can be trusted to do that. Albertans need a new government. Alberta NDP, we're ready.
And I know I'm just throwing this out at you because I probably haven't had a chance to review the details. What I'm hearing is that in the tweaks to the RESIDE program, they're going to shorten the length of time a physician needs to stay in the community for 2 years. going to expand beyond the original 15 communities, and going to open up eligibility beyond just people in the residency to people who have graduated within the last 5 years. Any initial thoughts on those changes to the programs or anything that you would propose to improve things?
So here's the thing. You can offer a financial incentive, and indeed, that's been done in many cases, has proved to be successful sometimes, not always. But ultimately, what is going to convince a physician to come to a community and stay in that community long term? Let's be clear, that's what we need. So they're shortening the time frame that a physician is going to be there. Potentially that could just exacerbate the problem. What you need is communities that are strong and attractive, and that means they have investment in their healthcare system, they have a strong education system, they have support for their local economy, which, let's be clear, a strong healthcare system in primary care is a big part of rural municipalities being able to maintain a strong local economy. Those are the sorts of things that draw people in. And coming into an environment where they know that healthcare system is supported, invested in by the government, so that they know they are going to be working in a system that is working to provide the best possible care for the people they're going to be looking after. And knowing that they have the government has their back in achieving that goal. And that does not exist in the province of Alberta. This government has spent the last 2 years, as I've said repeatedly, attacking, creating chaos, undermining the system. There's the potential that the next UCP leader is going to make that even worse. So you can adjust these parameters in the program, you can shorten time frames, you can increase the dollars, but that ultimately is not what's going to solve this problem for our communities.
Okay, we're going to go over to the phone and Zoom now. Bill, your line should be open.
Question here. A lot of the shortage in rural doctors predates this government. What specifically, I know you touched on this a little bit here, but specifically what would you do in government to attract and retain rural doctors? Sure,
and that's a fair question, and I acknowledge. This has been a challenge for some time, but hey, I'll also note that I've been hearing recently that there have been some local municipalities that have had some success in recruiting doctors. That has been despite this government, let's be clear, not because of anything they have done, but it's because these communities have spent years refining and working on how to best attract and retain. And again, I've heard from many of them about how much more difficult this government has made it. But in terms of actual steps we can take to address this problem in a longer term and hopefully more successfully, I think working with our post-secondary institutions, because what's been proven, and I've talked with folks in the CPSA and others in rural practice that have been training folks and giving them experience as rural doctors, that when people get experience working in a rural community, they are more likely to consider returning to work in a rural community. One of the other sides is when we recruit students from rural communities, they are more likely to go back and practice in the communities that they have come from. So that's work we can do with our post-secondaries to offer more of those opportunities, access, and training to give doctors that experience and make it more likely that they would want to return. Secondly, I think we need to work with our rural municipalities. And like I said, there's been some that have been successful. I mean, it's been a real struggle for them. We're talking 1 or 2 doctors here and there, but they have been successful because they know their communities and they know what they have to offer. And when government works collaboratively with them, instead of making their job more difficult, we can have far more success. Then lastly, we do have to look at the challenges around, I think, international medical graduates. And I recognize this is a complex issue. We got to make sure that we are maintaining good standards, but I think there's certainly an opportunity to look at how we maybe are able to streamline some of those processes, work more effectively. And then lastly, looking at how we create healthcare teams. Because certainly I think physicians are open to having the opportunity to work with others, like nurse practitioners and other folks who can step in and help out in some of these more remote communities, some of these areas where we can work in tandem to ensure that people can access particularly primary care in their community when and where they need it.
Do you have a follow-up, Bill?
No, I'm good. I think he hit all those. Thank you.
Okay, we'll make another call for questions for anyone on the Zoom or the phone. Please use the raise hand function on Zoom and *9 on the phone. And seeing no more questions, that will conclude our press conference. Thank you for attending, everyone.
Thank you.
So much for watching, and to learn more, check out albertasfuture.ca.